They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
All right. And today, guys, we just need a break. We just need to have a little fun. You know how we spend a lot of time. We always said when we wanted to do this podcast and we were coming up with this idea, Katie, we said, we're going to do culture and we're going to do all these pop culture and we're going to do Hollywood and we're going to do movies and we're going to do books and we're going to do cooking if we want to. We're going to do everything. But the news cycle has been so absolutely insane that there hasn't really been time for that in an election year because we've been trying to bring you guys all the latest news and the best guests to bring you extra insight on that. And so, Katie, I am so happy today because today it's like summer vacation in the fall. That's what it's like. We're going to talk about movies, man. It wasn't there like a whole thing about that? Movies, man. It's movies. So we thought it would be fun. This is your week, where you're going to suggest some movies that we may have that we've never seen, or maybe something a little more obscure. And we're going to talk through them. And then in another episode, I'll be doing mine and we'll just have some fun. And by the way, we hope that you'll comment on our social media, Jennifer Horn Radio, or you can search for Catherine Gorka on Facebook and let us know some of the movies that we might miss or something we should check out. We love having that feedback with you. So Katie, I'm excited about this because we're finally just going to take a deep breath and put politics aside for a moment.
I love it because politics have been in my face all day.
I know. And twice on Tuesday.
Oh,
all right. So
gosh.
How did you get the idea for this before we jump into the movies and going through them? Because you've put together this nice list for us. You came up with this idea. You said, how about movies that aren't like totally mainstream that we can chat about? How was that? How did that pop into your mind?
Well, I just feel like I love movies,
Yeah.
and I can't stand most of what's on TV these days. I think there's very little that I can watch, and I don't even like the movies that are coming out every weekend. When Sebastian and I, if we have like a free evening, we're like, oh, let's go to the movies. And then I look at what's playing and I don't want to see any of it.
I know.
There have been a few. Okay. We saw Reagan. That was great. I'm super excited for the Bonhoeffer movie, which is coming out based on Eric Metaxas's great book.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a handful, but this is a longstanding issue. It's something that Sebastian and I have actually been talking about for a long time. The fact that conservatives kind of gave up on Hollywood. One of the things that I talked about in my book, Next Gen Marxism, was the fact that the Soviets recognized the importance of propaganda and they went all in. In fact, one of the stories that I traced was the man who ended up being the first head of the Screen Actors Guild was an all-out communist. And he was all about, there's a great quote of him telling the writers, right? Because he had sort of control or oversight over the writers for Hollywood, and telling them how, look, if you've got somebody going on screen who's a member of a country club, make them look like a cad. And if you've got, somebody sort of downtrodden, make them look really sad and victimized. They recognize the value of Hollywood to shape the culture. And, it's just been completely taken over. I
love it. So we come up with some ideas of things that are not super politicized, right?
Or things that are, I found myself going back to things that are older. So I got really torn when I was coming up with my list because I wanted to come up with more obscure ones. But then I also got into thinking about my favorites and I found it really interesting. So I'm listing some of my favorites as well, which everybody will know. But what I found really interesting as I was going through my list was there is a theme which is very Trumpian.
Okay.
Because my theme is what I started to see in a number of my favorite movies is you have a hero who very much respects the law. So they're not renegades. They don't, I really don't like movies that glorify evil or that glorify bad guys, right? So these are good guys, but part of what they're going up against is almost like a small town version of the deep state, like when the
Right.
bureaucratic state goes too far. So I will start this. I'll mention this first just because this is the clearest example of it. But all the Jesse Stone movies. All right. Did you ever see those?
You know, it's so funny. So that's the Tom Selleck series, right?
Yes. Yes.
I have seen bits and pieces of those movies, and I've always put it on my list of things that I should sit down and watch because Tom Selleck is actually a conservative guy. And
Yes.
I am a huge fan. Do you and Seb ever watch Blue Bloods?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I did. I didn't like it as much, but yes.
I really love that show. I haven't watched it a couple of seasons, but my very favorite is every episode, there's always a family dinner scene. And
Yes.
I just love seeing that dynamic. I think because I'm such a family oriented person, I love seeing them come together no matter what's going on in their lives. Sometimes they're laughing, sometimes they're yelling, sometimes they're crying. And I love that dynamic of that series. So I'm a Tom Cruise fan. Plus, of course, Magnum PI. Hello. You can't fault him for that one. So I would love to watch these Jesse Stones. Do you have a favorite?
I don't. There's a bunch of them. I love them all. And I have to say also one of my other criteria for movies that I'm putting on my favorite list is I can watch them over and over again. And
Right.
I put all the Jesse Stones in that category. And another thing I'll say that I noticed as I was going through my list is how important music is. In virtually all of the films, the music is very, very distinctive and very, very good. And I love the Jesse Stone theme music. So pay attention when you watch.
Can you just, for those of us who haven't fully embraced that series or seen it yet, he's a detective, right?
He's a cop. So he's a cop who is an alcoholic, had to leave Los Angeles where he was, big city cop. And he ends up in a small town on the East Coast, on the Northeast. And, it's basically, cases that he's dealing with. But what's so great about him is he respects the law. He doesn't cross the law. But he finds his own ways to help sort of bring about justice, right? And his deep state in this case is the town council, who is like, these just self-important bureaucrats that constantly try to control his life and kind of put their thumb on him, and how he bucks them, how he just says, you can fire me, but you can't tell me what to do.
It sounds very much like living in Los Angeles and the control that they had over the sheriff's department, just to mess with them a little bit. All right. So the Jesse Stone movie. And do you think that it has anything to do with, because Tom Selleck, I know, has a lot of creative control. So he's creating stuff that I think probably conservative people are going to like anyway, because that's his ideology.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. So, definitely. I wish there was more of that. Okay. I have to mention The Sound of Music. All-time favorite.
Very good. I know. And that was for your birthday one year. Didn't you go see The Sound of Music in the movie theater?
During COVID, it was possible for virtually no money to rent out an entire movie theater. I think it was I thought my husband spent some outrageous amount of money.
No, it was like $100.
Yeah, it was like $100. But again, think about the story of The Sound of Music. It's about like a renegade hero and his family, and they're up against a state, the Nazi state, that gets too enthralled with its own power. It abuses its power. See that theme? I'm telling you, it keeps coming back. And of course, the music, right? The music
always fantastic
is so important. Okay, how about Blade Runner? Would Blade Runner go on your list of favorites?
Do you know I've never seen it?
Don't admit that to my husband. That's his
I know. No, I did.
movie.
I think he gave it to me as a homework assignment to go watch it. I'm not sure that I have, because he and I will talk about movies a lot. And that was one of them that he absolutely loves. So you got to give me the plot here, because you got to fill me in. I know I'm the worst. I watch very strange things, but I've never seen some of what I would consider to be almost the quasi classics, right? People love Blade Runner. It's got such a cult following. And he wanted to rent the cruise ship. Remember? He wanted to rent our cruise ship to show Blade Runner.
Yes, the theater, right. So
okay, he didn't want to rent the cruise ship. Sorry, that would be very bougie.
Yeah.
Just the theater.
So again, a great sort of renegade hero who doesn't want to, abide by the rules of the police and their bureaucracy. So he kind of goes off on his own, but they bring him back because they need help with a particular case. And so it's all about, his pursuit of this case. But what makes Blade Runner great is sort of the existential questions of what is it to be human, right? Because it gets into, so it's about, these basically very sophisticated robots, right? Androids that have been created, and they've been implanted with human memories. And so what it really gets into sort of deep questions of what is it to be human. But again, I think what makes the movie great, and this is sort of what I like so much about so many of my favorite movies, certainly Jesse Stone. It's almost like there's a mood. It's more like a mood. You're not being hit on the head. You're not being indoctrinated, for one thing. They're free of all of that, which is what's gotten so tedious about Hollywood is, the just being beaten over the head with the politics of it all. And these are more just, kind of the struggles of being human, the struggles, we all confront with, do we obey the rules? Do we step aside from the rules? How do we challenge injustice when we see it? How do we have good relationships, love, loss? They're just so human. That's what I think I love about them.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because you've got a pretty eclectic list so far. You've got different realms of film, not all from one genre, but the human experience, I think, yes. And also I think it's really interesting that your films really focus on abiding by the law, but being a fighter, which is really kind of what we talk about on this podcast, right? Like, what do we do within the law to win, to fight, to push forward? It seems like that is a really cool, prevalent theme, especially for where you are in your life right now.
I know, that's what I thought was so interesting as I started putting my list together to realize what a consistent theme that is. And also the whole idea of that it's so common that people get, as Sebastian would say, they get drunk on a thimbleful of power.
That's it.
That sort of growth of the bureaucratic state and these bureaucrats that just get too much power. It's such a common theme. I thought that was just really interesting. Okay, I'm going to keep going.
Keep going.
What happens when the power's out, your phone says no service, and the grid is down? Do you have a backup plan? If you don't have a satellite phone from sat123.com, you're risking more than just missed calls. A satellite phone from sat123.com keeps you connected no matter what. You could be miles from civilization or in the middle of a natural disaster. This phone works when everything else fails. It's your lifeline when the world goes dark. And let's be real, these days anything can happen. But with sat123.com, you're prepared. Sat123 is committed to American values. They believe in reliability and quality that you can trust when it matters most. Don't wait until it's too late. Head over to sat123.com and use code Katie for $25 off. Protect yourself, protect your family, and stay connected with sat123.com. One of my all-time favorites, The Piano, the 1993 film directed by Jane Campion. Again, absolutely beautiful score by Michael Nyman. One of my favorite all-time actresses, Holly Hunter, plays the lead. Incredible performances from Sam Neill and Harvey Keitel. And that amazing sort of famous performance from Anna Paquin. I think she won as a very young actress. Yeah, she won a Best Supporting Actress for that. Again,
she was very young in that movie too, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She's a good actor. I wonder whatever happened to her. I don't know that she's been around.
She did some stuff and then maybe kind of backed away. But anyway, that was always one of my favorites. Did you like that movie?
I loved that movie. I loved it. And I remember seeing it pretty young, actually, when it came out. But I remember being taken by it. And I remember my mom's best friend used to have an Oscar party every year. And so my mom would drag me along to watch the Oscar party. And I used to love it. I used to love award shows and beauty pageants. And then they all became crazy. But I remember rooting for that movie. I remember really being such a fan that I felt personally engaged with their plight to win those awards. So I remember really enjoying that movie.
I think it's unusually really a woman's movie too.
Yeah.
Not to say
and it wasn't heavy-handed though. I don't think it was super heavy-handed again in the messaging, which was
not in this.
good.
No, I mean, not in the sense that it was feminist or anything
Correct.
like that, but it was definitely more, it was about the world of feelings. It wasn't car chases and Transformers, right?
I know, which are not bad.
And to be fair, I mean, the other thing is it was pretty groundbreaking that Jane Campion was the director. I mean, that was 1993. And I remember it was big news for a film directed by a woman to go, hit the big time. Now it's much more common, but it was big news back in the day.
Yeah, no, that really was a huge element. And it was somebody breaking down. Again, we love to talk about these glass ceilings, right? And not always are they the ones that you want to see broken. But this was, I think that was a huge deal. That was a huge part of the storyline, is that was a female driven film and it was a success. And it wasn't just a success at the award shows. I think it was a pretty big success at the box office too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's what you could call, I mean, I would be inclined to call it like a cult classic, but maybe it was even more of a mainstream classic. I mean, I definitely think it's considered a classic. I'm gonna have to watch it again. I haven't watched it in a while.
It's been a long time for me too. I'll have to check it out as well.
Yeah.
All right. So is that your list of 5?
No, I'm going more than 5.
Oh, you've got more. I thought
more.
you just. I was going to say, okay, so then before you move on, because I wanted to just jump in there with a movie that just came to my mind. So one of my all-time favorite movies, I probably told you, I have like 3 and they're so wild. And actually, so I loved The Wizard of Oz growing up. I don't know why I loved it. I just loved it. Watching it as a kid, I think the scenery and just how beautiful it was. And then the storyline, I'm a big fan of Wicked as well when it comes to I just bought tickets to take some of my friends' kids to go see it because they are at the age now where they can see it and appreciate it at our Pantages Theater, which is beautiful. But I love The Wizard of Oz, so I would throw it on the list too. But what I was going to bring up in reference to the piano when it comes to female films is my female film that I love so much is Steel Magnolias. And I know it is such a silly little film, but first it has Dolly Parton in it. So it must be loved because everything Dolly Parton touches is great. But I was trying to figure out, I was young when this movie came out, but I've probably seen it 40 times and I cry every time and I laugh every time. And I don't know why this movie has touched me. And I was kind of listening to you talk about the piano. And I think it just hit me that it is that female experience, that female bond of friendships. For a long time in Hollywood, they always did buddy films, right? They'd always have like the 2 guys on the road. But this was really, I think, one of the first films, at least in my mind, in my generation, I think that I saw, where it depicted really strong female relationships that included younger people like Julia Roberts' character. And then it had older people like Olympia Dukakis. And it was just this all-encompassing group of women, all different. They'd fight, but they loved each other. They fought for each other. And that always just really stuck out. And I think it might be that female camaraderie. I think that we don't always see in films. So in a healthy way, I mean, how many times do you see the movies where women are competing with each other? This was just, I thought, one of the sweetest movies. And I haven't seen it in several years. I should rewatch it again. But gosh, for a long time, I used to love that thing and would watch it every time it was on.
Okay, not so different. Another one that I loved was Something's Gotta Give. Do you remember this one?
Yes. That's Jack Nicholson, right? Was it Jack Nicholson? No.
Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton.
Yes.
No movie so consistently makes me laugh as this one. And again, I think what I love about it is Diane Keaton plays... So he is such a sexist pig in this movie. And
old curmudgeon-y guy.
and she is a very successful playwright.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like just laughing at him, but sort of overwhelmed by him. But then it becomes, right, then it goes along and they get involved. But again, it's such a sort of rich and beautiful story about people shifting and changing and moving toward each other, right? He kind of moves away from his typical sort of sexist approach, and she's very off, sort of putting him off all the time, but then she kind of softens and warms up, and it's just great. And let's just be honest, the best interior decorating of any movie, right? We all coveted that house.
Absolutely.
And so
except for the father of the bride house, I think that was the only one that came close.
Oh, that's funny. But it's also just one of the truly funniest movies.
I think it's a great, and you know what? As much as Jack Nicholson's politics irk me, he's a great actor and he's a joy to watch. He is always, whatever he does, he fully commits to. And I love that movie too. I haven't seen that one in quite a while.
Yeah, that's a good one. Volatility and uncertainty are everywhere we turn. Many Americans have grown increasingly tired of the reckless fiscal spending, mounting national debt, and the looming threat to the dollar. With never-ending political and global conflicts, Americans are looking for a way out of the fragile paper system and craving a trustworthy asset to help protect their savings. That's why they turn to gold, specifically a gold IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. If you have over $100,000 in a retirement account, it's time you learned about the potential benefits of a gold IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. Augusta Precious Metals is a world-class organization that prides itself on top-notch service. Ready to learn more? Get your free guide on gold IRAs today by calling 855-222-6994. Volatility is everywhere. Now is the time to take control of your retirement to secure a brighter financial future with Augusta Precious Metals. Call them at 855-222-6994 today. Okay, my favorite cheesy movie, but I love it and I can watch it over and over and over again, is Love Actually.
Oh, that is on my list too. And
right?
It's my favorite, like as far as Christmas movies go, because I'm a Christmas banana. I'm just a freak about it. And there's a whole slew of Christmas movies I love, but that one you could watch at Christmas. You can watch it any time of year. I absolutely love it. And how cute is Hugh Grant in that movie? Oh,
completely. Every performance.
And Colin Firth, who I love so much too.
Yep. Speaking of Colin Firth, I was this came off of my, when I was looking more at the obscure films, one of the ones that I was going to bring up, partly because I do love Colin Firth so much. Did you ever see the one called My Life So Far?
I have not. I loved him in The King's Speech, though. I think that was one of his best performances, which was so amazing.
So I really have to recommend My Life So Far. I have very special feelings about it because I watched it with my son when he was probably 8, 9 years old with a terrible stomach virus in bed. And it was just one of those days where I was home, he was home, and we just hung out and watched this movie. And we both loved it. It's a coming of age story. Colin Firth is the dad. It takes place in Scotland. He plays a sort of nutty inventor, but very wonderful, engaged dad. And it is just one of the sweetest, most wholesome films. You got to watch. If you like Colin Firth, you got to watch it.
I do. My Life So Far. Okay. Yep. I'm going to have to check that one out too.
Very sweet. Okay.
Plus him in Scotland. I could handle that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Now I'm going to jump back in time for my last two. So, my first ever James Bond. So I think I have special feelings about it because it was the first one I ever saw in a theater. I was 13 years old. So it was 1973. Live and Let Die.
Oh yeah.
Loved that movie.
Absolutely. So I'm a James Bond. Like I love them all. I'll watch them all. I think they're all fantastic. And especially the older ones, the newer ones. I don't love Daniel Craig as much as I love the classic Bonds. I mean, it's just, they're fun. They are exciting. They're just, Love it. So that's your favorite James Bond movie?
That is absolutely, and I think because it was the first one that I saw, and also because it is the most killer theme song. I love that song.
It's a great, oh my gosh, amazing. That's a very good choice. I like that one. And I know a lot of people don't love, like, I think they would say, oh, a lot of women don't like these action movies. I love them. As long as they have a good story with them. Like, I don't need people just shooting and killing and blowing people up for no reason. But if you've got a story, and the James Bond movies always do, they are always so much fun.
Yeah, no, completely agree. All right.
And that is the best theme too.
Last one. And this is kind of a weird one, but it always stuck with me. Did you ever see the movie called Diva?
No.
Okay. So I feel like I saw it when I was in school. I was in graduate school in London. The movie actually came out in 81, but I feel like I didn't see it till the mid 80s. And so I don't know that it did really well. So it's the story of how do you call that? Like a motorcycle delivery guy, right? A guy who delivers packages, but he loves a particular opera singer. And so he takes a secret recording of one of her performances. And the song that is being sung sort of throughout, repeated, is La Wally, which I guess is a famous aria. Absolutely one of the most haunting, most beautiful, I think, songs that I've ever heard. It was apparently sung. So I think the actress was one person. The actual singer was another. The singer was Wilhelmina Fernandez. She's no longer alive, sadly. Such a beautiful voice. But again, a very sort of beautiful, moody movie, but yet also a thriller. So, interesting. It's an interesting film. I recommend it if you've never seen it.
I can't believe I haven't ever heard of it. And who are the stars? Do we know the stars?
Oh no! I mean, nobody whose name you would know. I mean, it was a young guy, and then a woman who plays. And I'm terrible. I mean, I feel bad because I'm sure in their own minds they're famous, but they're not
in this mind, no.
I was not. I didn't recognize their names as.
And so he gets the recording of her singing, and then what happens? Is somebody trying to come after him?
Yes, because somehow the mob gets involved. They think he's got he's actually, maybe at the same time he accidentally recorded like the police, or there's some whole other storyline. So then they're coming after him. But he's got this precious recording, like the last recording of her singing. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie.
And that's called Diva. All right, you've given me a couple of now. I've got more assignments. I know I'm going to get in trouble if I don't watch Blade Runner. I know that. So I got to do that. I have to watch My Life So Far and Diva.
Yes.
And I like the James Bond stuff. I do like that. Those movies are just so dang entertaining. And my dad raised me on those James Bond movies. So I think they also bring me like the happy feelings just because we'd always watch them together. As a kid, I remember just loving them. And I think in some ways, and I hate to say this, but I think in some ways, Tom Cruise really missed the boat on being a James Bond. I feel like after watching him,
he was considered for being James Bond, and he said no.
He's not tall enough. He did say no?
No, I'm asking you. I thought that's what you were saying.
Oh, no. I just feel like watching Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible movies, which are also equally fantastic, I think. Well, maybe James Bond's a little better, but they're really good. I just feel like with the stunts and all of that, I mean, he would have been, and I think he could have been one of the best. I think he could have been a James Bond. I don't know if he's too short. I don't know what the problem was, but
I feel like they always get around that. I mean, maybe they didn't give him enough money.
Maybe so. I know. I still have a soft spot for Pierce Brosnan, though. Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan.
I loved him. Yeah,
I know.
I agree.
All right.
I do agree with you, though, that I think as I was thinking back through my list, with every single one that I really loved, I could vividly remember when I had first watched it. And I do think there is something about how sort of, whether it's who you're seeing it with or when in your life you're seeing it, that kind of gets wrapped up into whether you really love a film or not.
Yeah, no, I think it speaks to you at whatever moment you're in and kind of that snapshot, which is why it's so fun to go back through and think about the movies because it really does kind of define you. And I love that over like the messaging, as we talked about, the messaging in these movies that you talk about are very similar and the killer soundtrack. So music obviously has to be a huge component of your viewing and you're experiencing these movies when you see them. So
Yes.
I like it. All right. Just because you mentioned Love Actually, favorite holiday movie before we wrap today. Because we're getting to be that time already.
Honestly, I can't even think of a single holiday movie. The only one I can think of, because they always talk about it, is Die Hard.
Is it a Christmas movie? That's always the question, right? I think it is, actually. I love Love Actually. That's number one, of course, on the list. And The Holiday was very cute. If you saw that with Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet, that was fun. I also love White Christmas. I love Holiday Inn. Some of the old movies are just fun.
Watch that. Yep.
Yeah, I love some of the old ones. And gosh, I don't know. I seem to watch a lot of the Christmas, but I guess we'll have to do another maybe holiday episode or something.
I always like Elf.
Oh, duh. How can I forget it? Elf and Christmas Vacation. Hello. Those are the two you got to have every single year for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Now, before we leave this, are you watching anything on TV these days?
What have I watched? Well, nothing that I've committed to, but I did just start a couple of new shows that I watched. First of all, I've been watching Monsters, which is the Menendez story. And I think I told you I'm kind of out on that. I don't know how I feel, about that trial, because I do think there was some abuse. The way Ryan Murphy presents him is strange. But it's also Ryan Murphy who does really weird and out there things. So I'll get back to you on that one. But I started some new network shows because I am 75 years old, maybe 80. I love the networks and I do stream, but I watched High Potential, which is on ABC.
Oh, I just started watching that. I really liked it.
It's very cute, but I did have to laugh because if you haven't seen it yet, the premise of that show is that she's like a cleaning lady and she's cleaning what is a closed LA police department, which would never happen. Like everybody's gone. She's dancing on the desk. She's vacuuming. She's doing her thing. And then she knocks over files and looks at a case and then corrects a board that they had going on a murder trial and puts victim instead of suspect. And the detective in charge gets, pretty upset. He calls her in and he says, "What were you doing in here? Why?" And so she basically shows him her train of thought. And then at the end, they hire her. And I thought, okay, this would never happen. But it was still cute. And she's very fun and likable and eclectic and smart. And so I think it'll be a fun, entertaining show. But it was very funny.
Do you see the theme, though? It's the same theme, right? She's like
good guys working within the law to push the boundaries a little bit.
Renegade hero, doesn't like the sort of the bureaucracy, but she can, kind of make peace with it. Yeah, absolutely.
You and I are definitely on the same track with that. And then the other show that I just watched is the female version of Matlock. Did you see that? It just aired on CBS and Kathy Bates stars in it. Matlock.
Oh, but with a female lead?
Kathy Bates. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there were a few little woke things that happened in the show, but they weren't overwhelming enough, I think, to distract from what's going to be an interesting story. So basically you find out that she's actually upset with pharmaceutical companies because of the opioid problem that claimed her daughter's life. And so she is trying to seek vengeance, I guess, for her daughter. So we'll see where it goes. But it was pretty good so far. I'd recommend that. I think Kathy Bates, one of my favorite scary movies of all time. And because I don't like scary slasher movies, I love, if it's going to be a thriller, it's got to be psychological. Silence of the Lambs for one, but I loved Misery. Did you ever watch Misery?
I don't think so.
Oh my gosh, Katie.
I can't watch scary.
It's a Stephen King book that they made into
he does me in.
Kathy Bates and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name. James. Anyway, you know him. He's a very famous actor and he plays a writer who goes away to try to find inspiration, and Kathy Bates takes care of him. So it's a good one. Yeah. But those are my TV shows now. What are you watching?
So Slow Horses.
Oh yeah, you love that one. I wrote that one down too.
Love Slow Horses. Again, absolutely fits the mold of what we're saying. Gary Oldman is totally that kind of renegade hero, barely stays within the law, but, is constantly at war with the bureaucracy, right? That MI6, MI5. It's very smart, great characters. I really like it. Then the other one I started is, although I'm glad you reminded me about High Potential, because I thought that was fun.
It was cute. Yeah.
Sometimes, like when I'm ironing, I just need something kind of fun.
This is what I use these shows for. Exactly. When I'm doing housework or just, wandering around, those are good shows.
And you can't have subtitles when you're trying to iron.
You can't.
But the other one that I'm enjoying is Tokyo Vice, which is really, really interesting. So it's actually really interesting because it kind of follows two Americans who have left the United States. One, it turns out she went to Tokyo as a Mormon missionary, left that life, and is now working in a nightclub. And then the guy left because he had, I don't know, kind of an overbearing, somewhat neurotic family. And they both speak Japanese fluently, which is so impressive. And he gets a job working on the big newspaper in Japan. And so it's, you've got these characters that are like the outsiders, but kind of finding their way. And it's interesting because it makes you constantly reflect on what is American culture versus what are other cultures? What are the sort of bold things that Americans will do that people in other cultures won't do? So I find it really thought-provoking and interesting. I like it.
I love that. All right. And both of those are streaming shows?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to have to check it out. And again, you can find us on social media. Let us know what you're watching. Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, and search Catherine Gorka on Facebook. And we thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate the 5-star reviews, and we really appreciate you sharing Happy Women with your friends. Find us on all of our different platforms. All you have to do to connect is go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com and click on Happy Women. It'll show you all the places that we are. And don't forget to get Katie's book, Next Gen Marxism, which is available right now. And again, her website, katiegorka.org. You can find her, as we said, Facebook, search for Catherine Gorka. On X, you can find her, Gorka Katie. And I am on social media as well. No book yet to speak of, but maybe coming soon. You never know, to a bookshelf near you. But on Instagram and Facebook, Jennifer Horn Radio, at Jennifer Horn on X and on Truth. And thanks so much for joining us. This is another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.